Hola, welcome back to SpanishForYourJob.com. In this lesson, we will review the top 10 verbs in spoken Spanish. Let's start with the first verb on the list. Please tell me, how do you say to be in Spanish when used for temporary characteristics such as the place where you are? I'll wait for a few seconds so you can think about it and say it out loud. How do you say to be when used for temporary characteristics in Spanish? Go ahead, I'll wait. Got it? The word for to be in Spanish, when used for temporary characteristics such as the place where you are located or the way you are feeling, is estar. Here it is one more time. Estar. To be, when used for temporary characteristics. Estar. Were you able to remember the word? Was it easy to remember? Let's move on to the second verb on the list. What's the word for to be in Spanish when used for permanent characteristics such as your nationality or your gender? Go ahead and say it out loud. What is the word for to be in Spanish when used for permanent characteristics? I'll wait for you. Got it? The word for to be in Spanish when used for permanent characteristics is ser. Here it is one more time. Ser. To be, for permanent characteristics. Ser. Now, what's the word for to go in Spanish? Go ahead, I'll wait for you. Got it? The word for to go in Spanish is ir. Here it is one more time. Ir. To go. Ir. Next on the list, how do you say to have in Spanish? Go ahead and say it out loud. How do you say to have in Spanish? I'll wait for you. Got it? The word for to have in Spanish is tener. Here it is one more time. Tener. To have. Tener. Let's move on to the next verb on the list. What's the word for to have in Spanish when used as an auxiliary verb? Go ahead and say it out loud. Did you get it? The word for to have in Spanish when used as an auxiliary verb is haber. Here it is again. Haber. To have when used as an auxiliary verb. Haber. Next, What's the word for to want in Spanish? Go ahead and say it out loud. Got it? The word for to want in Spanish is querer. Here it is one more time. Querer. To want. Querer. Next verb. How do you say to be able in Spanish? Go ahead and say it out loud. I'll wait. How do you say to be able in Spanish? Got it? The word for to be able in Spanish is poder. Here it is one more time. Poder. To be able to. Poder. Next, what's the word for to do in Spanish? Go ahead and say it out loud. What's the word for to do in Spanish? Got it? The word for to do in Spanish is hacer. Here it is one more time. Hacer. To do. Hacer. Next on the list, what's the word for to know in Spanish? Go ahead and say it out loud. In Spanish, the word for to know is saber. Here it is again. Saber. To know. Saber. Now, the last word on the list. How do you say to see in Spanish? Go ahead and say it. I'll wait for you. How do you say to see in Spanish? Got it? In Spanish, the word for to see is ver. Here it is again. Ver. To see. Ver. In this lesson, we have reviewed the top 10 verbs in spoken Spanish. How did it go? Were you able to remember all the verbs on the list? Was it easy or difficult? If you were not able to remember all the verbs on the list, or you found that some of them were difficult to remember, I encourage you to go over this lesson again tomorrow and repeat the process as many times as needed until you can memorize these verbs successfully. That's all for today's lesson. Good job!